Welcome, everybody. I am not sure if our intro music has played or not. Chad is not going to be joining us right away. He's running a little bit behind, so I'm going to try and take the show solo here in the beginning. And he usually plays the intro music first, so I apologize if you couldn't hear it. I tried to hear it, play it on this side, but technical difficulties. What can I say? So, welcome to Explorers, Seekers of the Truth. This is episode 48 of Historic Yeti Encounters. This is part 3. Hey, Moon Joey, good to see you, buddy. This is part 3. So, we started off with part 1 several weeks ago, which we covered from, let me go to the timeline, from 1832 down to, let's see, 1925. Then we picked part 2 up from 1936, and we finished that off at 1955. So today, we're going to be starting off at 1957 on the timeline, and we're going to be talking about the Tom Slick expedition. Hey, Rick, good to see you. Thanks for joining in. And I'm hoping Chad joins in soon, because he actually found out some information that is actually pretty interesting that he is going to add to the Slick expedition. So I'm hoping he comes in sooner rather than later. But I completely understand how it goes when you run behind and things just kind of get in the way. So you can't hold that against the guy. So as we always say, you could comment here. The show is live on, hey Norm, good to see you, buddy. The show is live on Facebook and it's live on YouTube. You could comment underneath the show in either one of those platforms, and I'll see it on my end, which I'm seeing some comments from both Facebook and YouTube coming in. So that's awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in. You could find us on Twitter at Explorers Group. You can go to our website, explorersgroup.com. There you could find out some more information about us, see some past shows, and just learn something that might be new. And again, we're on Facebook, on YouTube. So please, if you're on any of those platforms, follow our page, like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff on YouTube. That, helps promote the show and stuff like that, and helps us keep going with what we're doing here. And anyway, so we're going to start, like I said, at 1957. The Texas oilman Tom Slick sponsors a Yeti hunt. His expedition came back solely with reports made by Nepalese villagers that 5 people had been killed by severe battering from Yeti over the preceding 4 years. According to Atlas Obscura, Slick arrived in Nepal ready to spare no expense to fund a reconnaissance expedition to hunt for the mythical abominable snowman in Nepal. The quest failed, but Slick, injured while on the hunt, commissioned 2 guides, brothers Peter and Brian Byrne. For those of you who don't know, Peter Byrne is one of what they consider one of the original 4 horsemen of Sasquatchery. That would be Peter Byrne, Rene DeHinden, Grover Krantz, and John Green. And I believe Peter Byrne is the only sole survivor out of those 4 original explorers that really started putting Bigfoot and the Yeti on the map. But those brothers continued his search. And later that year, Peter Byrne discovered that the monks of the Pangboche Monastery, which I believe, Norm, you had mentioned last show about the Pangboche Monastery stuff, in a Nepalese village, claimed to hold a Yeti skull, top, and hand. And I believe I have a picture of that. Let me see if I could show it. Yeah, that's actually that's Sir Hilary with one of the Nepalese guys with the supposed Yeti skull cap. Let me get that out of there if I figure out how to hide it. Nope, that's not it. There we go. And we'll hide that one too. All right. So, yes. So they discovered the monks in the Pambashi Monastery. They had the Yeti skull and a hand on Slick's orders. And after much debate by the monks, Byrne negotiated to obtain a single finger from the hand in exchange for a relatively significant fee toward the temple's upkeep and a replacement human finger. So I don't know where they would get the human finger from. I guess they had to do a little grave robbing. And I do apologize in advance. I still have not gotten over the cold that kind of put Chad and I out of commission last week. We were supposed to have this show. He was sick. I was sick. I'm still, it's a chest cold. So I'm probably going to be coughing throughout the show. And again, I do apologize for that. And Byrne was quoted saying, "We made a donation of 10,000 rupees to the temple, only about $160 in today's rate of exchange, but a large amount for a community where the average income might be as little as $15 in an entire year." Um, and the lamas then gave me a go ahead to take one finger and replace it with another. From the human hand I brought back from London, wrote Byrne in a letter. It turns out that Byrne was not the first Westerner to see the supposed Yeti remains. Um, oh, Norm, you had the same thing. Yeah, it stinks. It was not fun. Um, excuse me. So, as early as 1953, a group of Indian mountaineers and an Austrian and British scientist viewed and measured the Yeti scalp. Although none of them mentioned the hand, the relics, it seemed, provided a source of income for the centuries old temple, since they were viewed as sacred relics by local worshippers and because the monks would allow visitors to photograph the bones for free. So, this kind of gave them a little something extra that they weren't getting before. So Byrne smuggled a finger and some skin from the hand across the Nepalese border into India, where he made a rendezvous in Calcutta with American movie star, which I don't know if many of you people know this, but supposedly the American movie star Jimmy Stewart and his wife Gloria, they helped smuggle that out of Nepal and out of the country. The famous couple agreed to smuggle the finger into the United Kingdom for research by Slick's friend and primatologist Osmond Hill of the Zoological Society of London, which they did by hiding it in Gloria Stewart's undergarments in her luggage. Because back then, it was kind of taboo and it was against, uh, I guess, good nature to go through a woman's negligees, like her undergarments and personal belongings. So they hid it in there, which was quite clever, I suppose. Byrne wrote in his letter, then 3 days later, the hotel's concierge called for reception to say that there was a British customs officer in the hotel lobby asking to see him. And could he send him up? They said yes, of course, and a few minutes later, a young British customs officer appeared at the door in their suits or in their suite rather. Gloria's lingerie case in hand, they gave the man a cup of tea, had a pleasant chat, and signed a receipt for the case, which Gloria noted was locked and had not been opened. Ushering the young man out the door, she pointed this out to him and asked why it had not been opened and examined by customs. "Oh, madame," said the young man, "certainly not. A British customs officer would never open a lady's lingerie case." So there you kind of go. Hey, OS, good to see you, buddy. It kind of goes along with what I was saying before, where it was taboo to go through a woman's private belongings. Excuse me. Several years later, the publisher of World Book Encyclopedia commissioned an expedition into the Himalayas, led by the famed Everest co-conqueror Sir Edmund Hillary, which I had showed the picture of him with the one monk with the skull cap. Hillary proposed a hunt to discover if the Yeti was a myth or monster. The expedition set out in late 1960, and while it failed to find evidence of the Yeti, Hillary methodically debunked the supposed Yeti bones he found in Nepal, including the bones of the Pambochi, which now included a human finger crudely wired into place, courtesy of Peter Byrne in 1958. So wrote the expedition commanders. The Pambochi Monastery says also boasts a Yeti hand, which more than one expert examining photographs and a flake of skin have declared to be human or part human. The hand is skeletal, heavy, markedly squared phalanges are wired together, and the palm partly covered with brown leathery skin. Excuse me. It is possible that some of the bones are not human, but almost certainly the best part of the hand is. It is a large but slender human hand and a woman's, perhaps, but more possibly a young llama's. Back in London, Hill examined the finger and declared it of human origin, although a number of other scientists in Slick's circle weren't convinced, and Hill himself later expressed doubts. So, I mean, this could be a classic case of one team trying to best another, and it's kind of turns into a pissing contest at that point on who could prove that it is one thing or another. No, they say it's this. No, we say it's not because we weren't there to get it first, and so on and so forth. So the skin taken by Byrne also didn't prove definitive. In testing of the skin decades later by the US television show Unexplained Mysteries also found no clear answer to the skin's origin. The hand at the monastery vanished in 1991 after the story of the Yeti aired. Um, Meanwhile, Peter Byrne began a hunt for another mythical creature, the Sasquatch, which I believe he is still hunting to this day in the Pacific Northwest. The bone analyzed by Hill disappeared until resurfacing in the collection of the Hunterian Museum of the Royal College of Surgeons, which notes it was obtained in 1976 as part of a bequest from Hill. In 2011, for the making of the BBC documentary, the finger was analyzed by the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland and at the request of the journalist Matthew Hill, and its DNA proved human. All right, so it looks like a lot of, no pun intended, fingers are pointing towards this thing being obviously a human. Now, granted, they replaced it with a human finger, or part of it with a human finger, so I don't know if they're testing off of that or if they're testing off of the one that was taken prior. I also heard that it was tested to be a bear paw, because when a bear paw kind of decomposes and rots away and partially mummifies, it looks very similar to a human hand, minus obviously the claws. But take them off, and it looks pretty close. Um, they go on to say we had several fragments that we put into one being. Hold on, I think my Siri is trying to pick me up here, and nah, I didn't try and talk to you, Siri. Sorry about that, everybody. And my computer just randomly picks up me talking, and I guess wants to try and help me. We had several fragments that we put into one big sequence, and then we matched that against the database, and we found human DNA. Rob Ogden of the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland told the BBC, we had to stitch it together, so it wasn't too surprising, but it was obviously slightly disappointing that you hadn't discovered something brand new. Well, to the chagrin of all of us, I guess, that we're following along with that throughout the decades from way back then until now. Obviously, I wasn't too far too far back then, but everybody was hoping and still hoping that it's, the legendary Yeti, but as everything else, it ends up being something it's not. So the Hunterian Museum stated that at that time that no formal request from the monks to return the finger had yet arrived. Perhaps the monks believed nobody would drop a coin in the donation box only to see a finger. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. So then we're going up to 1958. An American scientist working in Kathmandu, Nepal, Dr. Norman Drenforth, reports to have explored caves that were at some time inhabited by a type of very low grade of human or near human creature, presenting documentation and physical evidence in the form of hair samples, plaster casts of footprints, and discarded food scraps. Also in 1958, a Dr. Alexander Pronin reports seeing the creature while he was in the Palmers, a unique high mountain complex located primarily in Tajikistan. Then we jump ahead to 1960 and 1961. The Himalayan Scientific and Mountaineering Expedition also found some unusual tracks in the snow. In 1970, after hearing a strange noise near Mount Annapurna in Nepal, mountaineer Don Williams tracks and watches a strange humanoid creature for about 20 minutes through his binoculars before it lumbers away. Then in 1978, Lord Hunt photographed more Yeti tracks. And a lot of this stuff, while I was trying to do my research on this show, again, I really wanted to just kind of chronicleize all the historical encounters from the 1800s until now. I tried to find as much visual aid to go along with it, but some of it was just not the best quality. You couldn't really make out much of it, or it was just your standard trackway. And some of it is just really hard to find. So I really was trying to find some more visual aids to go along with these, but to uh, to my failure, I couldn't. So it is 8:46. We're 15 minutes into this show. I don't know when Chad is joining in. He really had some good input to go along with this. So if he doesn't join in before I'm at the end of this, I might have to cut the show short, everybody. I do greatly apologize. We were trying to stick to an hour format. But without my co-host, I don't have the second half of the show, really. He had a lot to put into this, and normally we bounce stuff back and forth, but unfortunately, I don't have him here to do that. So maybe if we miss him on the show, maybe we could throw whatever he had to put into it. Maybe we could throw that into another show down the line, because since we missed last week, we're piggybacking on next week's show. So we are planning on having a show next week, and I believe we're going to be talking about the Marfa lights. If anybody's not familiar with that, go look that up. Marfa lights in like Arizona in the Southwest. It's interesting mystery lights that are hanging around a lot of Native American lands and stuff like that. So we'll get into that more when that show comes about. But maybe we could add in his part of the slick expedition that he had found out. That was, I really was hoping he would be on to talk about it, because it is really kind of cool. So, all right, enough about that. We're going to go to 1978. And let's see. Oh, I just got a message. Is this him? I don't think so. Nope, false alarm. All right, 1979. Reader's Digest: Mysteries of the Unexplained. More tantalizing evidence of the elusive Nepalese Yeti. He was found during the British Hinku expedition of 1979, after mountaineers John Edwards and John Allen spotted a possible campsite at almost 17,000 feet on their way down to base camp. On November 10th, Edwards noticed an overhanging boulder that formed a natural cave, and motioned Allen to wait while he took a closer look. He was astounded to see a set of almost human footprints in the snow. As Dr. Allen came to join him, both men were startled by a piercing, chilling in the human screen that lasted inhuman screen that lasted 5 to 10 seconds. Edwards and Allen decided they must be in the vicinity of an abominable snowman. The next day, the whole team, led by John White, returned to the site and photographed the still distinct footprints with their BBC camera. The tracks were of varying sizes, suggesting a pair or perhaps even a small family of creatures. Droppings found near the prints were gathered and taken back to England for analysis. Excuse me. We have photographed a print, says White, that no one can satisfactorily identify. I'm convinced that there is an animal up there that is not yet recorded by naturalists. So again, it's kind of interesting that we constantly find these trackways, but nothing really else to go along with it. I wish, I mean, they see people, these creatures kind of lumbering around. I don't know why they don't try and go to where they saw them and try and find more evidence. I don't know. Maybe they're too far away. And I mean, I know in a lot of that terrain, it's not exactly easy to go, skipping along to where, something is on the other side of a mountainside or whatever. But I don't know. I wish there was just a little bit more, but I mean, these are the reports and it is what it is. Oh, one thing, let me see if I don't have it listed. I do have from Sir Hilary's expedition, I do have another image. I'll show you this. This is Sir Hillary. He showed a sketch of a Yeti based on eyewitness account. The sketch was adapted from one in Houvelman's book, which that is in Bernard Houvel. Oh gosh, I didn't have it next to me, but I don't know the title. I'll put it in the description later. Excuse me, but that is the eyewitness sketch of what they believe the Yeti to be, or according to that eyewitness, that's what they thought it to be. And he's depicting it there with some news briefing. But that was one of the images I was able to find. So it's one of the few. I thought I would share that with you guys just so you could see. And yes, Norm, there are crazy things in the woods, that's for sure. Um, all right, where did I leave off here? All right, so in 1986, climber Reinhold Messner reported a close-up sighting of a Yeti as it came into sight from behind a tree. In 1992, Gillian Freeman Atwood and two other men camping at a secluded spot on a remote glacier in Mongolia reported finding an unusual trail of heavy footprints. One morning on the snow outside their tent, definitely made by a creature larger and heavier than a human. Again, we got the footprints, but we have nothing else to go with it. Um, in 1998, American climber Greg uh, Kolonica on Mount Everest reported seeing a pair of Yetis while coming down the mountain on its Chinese side. Both had thick, shiny black fur, he said, and walked upright. So again, I think we kind of touched base on this on one of the past shows. I don't know if it was part one or part two, but this could be like elevation sickness where, people are descending maybe a little faster than they should, and they're getting a little disoriented, and what could be other climbers or hikers could be misidentified as something else. It could be, partial mirage like as you're watching these people walk away, the air vapors or whatever could be playing tricks on their eyes and making them look like hair. I don't know. Um, Excuse me. Or it could just be the fact that they saw what they saw. Again, I wish there were photos. I wish there was more kind of evidence to back up these claims. But again, they are just encounters and eyewitness reports. And that's all I have to go with, unfortunately. So we jump ahead to 2007. In early December 2007, American television presenter Joshua Gate and his team, Destination Truth, one of my favorite TV shows, I used to love that show, reported a series of footprints in the Everest of Nepal resembling descriptions of Yeti tracks, which that actually did make some pretty big news, especially over in Asia, um, where Josh had found these prints, casted them. It was, from what I remember, it was not your typical looking track. It didn't look very humanoid. It almost looked three-toed and bizarre from what I remember. I remember it was like from the ball of the foot back to the heel looked human, but then the toes kind of splayed out very oddly. So I don't know. It was a strange looking track to say the least. But he actually went out a few times, and if you haven't had a chance, Josh Gates's new show, Expedition Unknown, they do a whole special on hunting the Yeti. And if you haven't seen it, highly recommend checking it out. And he also has another really good special on UFOs, which is dedicated. I think it's like an hour or two long, dedicated to UFOs. But the hunt for the Yeti, actually, I think it's a multiple part. Well worth the watch. I personally love Josh Gates. I know we teased him on past shows and stuff like that with his voice and stuff like that, but I love the guy. I think he's an awesome presenter and entertainer. We actually, Chad and I went and saw him at one of his live shows, his speaking events. I'll tell you what, toes look like lollipops. That's right, Norm. They were weird. It was very odd. Like just the whole tracking looked odd to me, almost reptilian to me. I don't know. It was very odd, but we saw him live. And if you ever get a chance to go see his speaking session, highly recommend. Dude is just hysterical. He's just as charismatic live as he is on the show. He's awesome. Well worth it. Check out his special too on the Yeti. You'll learn a hell of a lot on that. They talk about a lot of the stuff that we talked about on the show, not quite as in depth or as many of the sightings as we talk about. But nonetheless, it's cool, and they do a lot of their own stuff to find evidence and whatnot. So check it out. It's really, really cool. So then we go ahead to 2008. On October 20th, 2008, a team of Japanese adventurers photographed footprints which could supposedly have been made by an abominable snowman. Their leader, Yoshitiro Takahashi, claims to have witnessed a Yeti on an earlier expedition in 2003 and is determined to capture the beast on film. Still has yet to be presented, though we wait anxiously. Then October 17th, 2013, research by a British scientist had concluded that the legendary Himalayan Yeti may in fact be a subspecies of brown bear. DNA tests on the hair samples carried out by Oxford University genetics professor Brian Sykes excuse me, found that they matched those from an ancient polar bear. He subjected the hairs to the most advanced tests available. He says the most likely explanation. Hey Ryan, good to see you, buddy. Um, the most likely explanation for the myth is that the animal is a hybrid of polar bears and brown bears. Professor Sykes told the BBC that there may be a real biological animal behind the Yeti myth, which there's been a few shows about that. The name escapes me. I think it's Bigfoot Evidence. I think it's Bigfoot Evidence, but they do this whole search on the Yeti and stuff like that. And yes, ancient polar bear, very interesting. Yeah, yeah, it could be thought to be an extinct polar bear. That's kind of what that show is going on about. Is excuse me, I am so sorry. Um, is this thought to be extinct species or subspecies of polar bear, or maybe the original species of polar bear, because the polar bear had evolved from the brown bear to adapt to life on the ice. Um, so they were thinking that it could have been this bear that was thought to be extinct, but could possibly be still alive and out there. Although we see a lot in North America with the melting of the ice caps and all that stuff, and global warming or whatever you want to call it. um, the polar bears are now venturing more south, kind of more further away from their Arctic homes, and they are interbreeding and mingling with grizzly bears, and they are starting to produce what they're calling growler bears, and they are a hybrid of the two, which is again kind of interesting because the polar bear did originate from the brown bear, so it's almost like they're kind of, rather than letting themselves go extinct, the polar bears are basically rejoining their brown bear brethren and continuing on as this new growler bear species. And well, I guess as Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park says, life finds a way. So you do have that. Then in 2015, this one I don't know the much of the credibility, but again, we found it. It was a story, and I'll touch base a little bit on it here if it will show. So, an artist claims that he had a close encounter with a Yeti in 2015. A well known Tashtoggle artist and sculptor, Andriy Lyabenchenko, claims that he came face to face with an abominable snowman less than a month ago. Now, this was in 2015, is when this report came out. August 20th, in fact, of 2015. Like the Loch Ness Monster, summer is the usual time for sightings, but until now, there had been no known appearances this year by the mythical Yeti in eastern Russia. This has changed with well known Tashtoggle artist and sculptor Andrei Lyabechko claimed that he came face to face with the abominable snowman less than a month ago. Okay, this was repeating what we had just said. What's more, the Yeti posed for him, which is kind of odd that he would state that the Yeti had posed, allowing the artist to draw this picture on birch bark, and the pair even managed to speak, he claimed. It happened so unexpectedly, sorry, can't talk, and fast that I had no time to get scared, he said. There was a clear feeling that this was a thinking creature. I felt he was trying to talk to me. The Yeti was about 2.5 meters tall with thick dark brown hair like a bear's, but a lot softer. He was holding a wooden stick with bits of hair wrapped around it. But the main thing was his eyes. They were just like light colored human eyes. At the time, he was in the remote Tyaga in Komarovo region, well known as the Russian region with the most Yeti sightings. Excuse me. I'm going to try and get this picture for you guys here in a minute. I think I'll share my screen so I can show you. Let me try and do that for you guys really, really fast if I can. Here we go. Let's see. Here we go. Hopefully you guys could see that, but this is the supposed sketch of this. Hold on 1 minute. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. So this is the sketch of that Yeti. I got to take a sip of water. Hold on 1 second. I apologize. So this is the Yeti that this artist had drawn as it posed for him. And let's see, I'll end this. Okay. So it was in the morning of the 27th of July. I went into Tyaga to gather materials for wooden sculptures, he said. I usually need a lot of carved and unusually shaped branches. I live right next to the edge of Tyaga, so I left early in the morning. It was 5 a.m. I was getting close to the Chernaka mountain, which is right next to the Tashtoggle TV. Oh, mountain. Sorry. I went out onto a small open patch, and there I felt the Yeti's presence. I turned back and saw him standing up, deeper in the woods, not going away, and trying to communicate. It happened so unexpectedly, oh, I cannot pronounce that word tonight, and fast that I had no time to get scared. Lybenchko explained further, I'm saying he, because the shape of his body, his gestures, his behavior were clearly male. His body was very toned with lots of visible muscles, which that's kind of debatable if you watch the Patterson Gimlin film and Patty, who had prominent uh, breasts and is pretty well noted as being female, hence the name Patty of the Patterson Gimlin film. Um, she was she was pretty ripped. I mean, especially with the 4K stabilized footage that you have of that film now. I mean, you see the muscle striation, you see muscle tone, the muscles shake after the impact of the heel hitting the ground and everything. So can't just say that it was male based off of its physique. Um, where did I leave off? Yes. His hands and feet were proportionate to his body, the same way as with humans. His face was expressive too, just like his eyes. Also, I remember that he had huge legs. By human size, his feet were a size 60. Now, what that is in Russian size is compared to, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Compared to American sizes, I don't know. Oh, well, this suggests his feet were 46 centimeters in length or 18 inches. So I guess it's really not that big compared to most Bigfoot tracks that you find in the North America. I can't describe or understand how we spoke because, well, because it sounds unbelievable. It felt like we heard each other's thoughts as if it was telepathy. There was only one word that the Yeti actually said when I asked his name. His voice was low and chesty, and the name sounded as if somebody hit a tambourine twice. Taban is what he says. After the encounter, he sought a person who spoke the local Siberian shore language and asked about a meaning of the word without explaining where and how he heard it. He told that there can be several translations, one meaning a soul, another one meaning the one that wasn't discovered. The artist said, one moment, man. The artist said he was talking to the Yeti for about 40 minutes. He admitted he could not prove his encounter and that he was previously predisposed to believe in the existence of the Yeti, factors which are in common with many supposed sightings. I didn't have my phone with me or camera. But I always carry a pencil and something I could draw on. This time it was a piece of birch tree bark, he said. I made a drawing of the Yeti and showed him. The Yeti studied it really carefully for a while and then drew a symbol next to my drawing. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I still can't find what this symbol means. I've been going through books and the internet, but found nothing similar. Where there is a similar looking symbol for friendship, but I'm not sure this is it. If Yetis live so close to people, he was asked by a journalist from Kazbaz 85 newspaper why they did not show themselves more to humans. I wonder if they are scared to intervene. Do you think it was easy to put up with this meeting? I'm still in a state of shock. I can't believe it happened to me, he said. Um, Then it goes on to say, why was he chosen by the Yeti? I guess it was a pure coincidence, or perhaps it happened because I sincerely believe in Yeti's existence and imagined how one day I'd meet them. I've been dreaming about meeting them, to be honest. I also don't think that I am the only person that met Yeti. Others simply don't speak about it, rightly fearing they might be called insane. All I can say about myself is that I am as normal as one can find, and I'm physically and mentally healthy. I don't drink or take drugs. I think one day I'll get back to the place where we've met. I think we might see each other again. The newspaper said it has asked about him, and he is a reputable person in the city, quite well known, and certainly isn't a nutter. Russia's best known Yeti hunter, Igor Burstev, head of the Russian International Center for Hominology, has previously estimated that as many as 30 Yetis roam Kemerovo region. We are on the brink of finding the Yeti at long last, he said in 2011. However, many sightings or findings of the Yeti hair or footprint have been disputed by other experts who point out no remains of the animals have ever been discovered. Um, Igor will talk more about in the future shows. We're planning on talking about Yetis in Russia, the Russian Yeti or the Almast or Almasty. Um, so that's going to be another show. But Igor, that dude's been in it for a long, long time. He's got a lot of cool information. But again, they always make those claims. We're going to find out more very soon, very soon. And that was 12 years ago. So we haven't heard much since. But hopefully one day we will. Um, and again, I always find it odd where they keep getting these hair sampled and it either comes back as inconclusive or unknown primate or non-human primate. That I always find extremely interesting because if it's a non-human primate and Bigfoot is, as people claim, in looking in so close to humans, why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't that sample be then considered Sasquatch or Bigfoot or whatever you want to classify this creature as, and that would be the foundation blocks of future DNA samples that come in. I mean, you could use that as your basis, and that would be your base comparison. So other things coming in, you could indef- indefinitely say that there is this creature out there, although we don't have any physical evidence of it other than the DNA. We don't have photographs, a body, video, or anything that's conclusive. But you have this DNA block there that you could use as this basis. I mean, clearly there's something. So I don't understand why they don't just say, all right, well, this non-human primate or whatever you want to call it is the foundation or the building blocks of the Yeti, and anything else that comes in that matches, like, use that strain as your starting your base point, and anything else that comes in, if it matches that, then there's clearly something out there all throughout the world, in different parts of the world, that match that. So clearly that is some sort of a species. I don't know. I don't know why they don't just use that. But anyways, we're gonna hop ahead here, and this is the last point that I have. I thought Chad would have been here by now. Let me just send him a text really quick and see if we can expect him. Uh, Hopefully he responds and gets back to me. Um, so in April 2019, Indian military tweets that they, for the first time, have sighted mysterious footprints of the mythical beast Yeti, measuring 32 by 15 inches, close to the Makalu base camp on the 9th of April 2019. One moment. Oh my God. The elusive snowman has only been sighted at the Makalu Borin National Park in the past. So there we go. 2019 was the most recent Yeti. Now there could be some new stuff out there. I don't know since I put the notes together, but 2019 is the most recent that I had found. I do. Oh, is the man, the myth, the legend coming in? I think we might have Mr. Charlesworth if it approves. Come on, Schwartz. Well, oh, here. Do we have him? Well, we have an empty block, but I don't see him. Chad, if you could hear me, try logging out and logging back in, buddy. Hopefully we could get him in for the last 15 minutes. But while we're waiting on Chad, I do want to say that it was brought to my attention, and I apologize if this person is listening. I can't remember who was telling me this. But apparently there was recent the president of Mexico was showing photos of a Mexican Bigfoot that they had. So I'm gonna have to. Oh, here Chad's coming in. I have to look that up and see if I could find some more information on that because I find that extremely interesting that that is a possibility. Chad, I don't know if you could hear me, buddy, but your video's not coming through for whatever reason. I'll try sending you an updated link, buddy. Hold on. It would not be an Explore Seekers of the Truth show if we did not have technical difficulties. That is for darn sure. Okay, let's see. Hang tight, bud. I'm going to get you something. Hopefully, we could get you in. All right. So while we wait on him, I guess I'll try and kill some time here. Like I said, we have about 15 minutes left of the show before we have to end. And Chad found out some really cool information, and hopefully he's able to share it and he has it together. Unfortunately, he had other things that kind of took him away from the show tonight. But I don't want to spoil it if he does have those notes ready because I really want to talk about this. Come on, Schwartz. I got another request to put him in the show. Oh, God, no video. What's going on? Oh, I think we might have him. There he is. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I could hear you, buddy.
Okay.
All right. Thank God. Thank God you're here. So I was telling everybody that you had found some more information pertaining to the Slick expedition. I did not mention at all what it was because I wasn't 100% sure if you had the notes and everything together for it. So if you do, the floor is yours.
Okay, give me 1 millisecond.
You got it, buddy. You got it. I'm just glad you're here. I don't feel so lonely now.
You know.
You know what? You know what saved the time slot was reading that 2015 encounter of that artist in Russia that said he was communicating with the Yeti and drew his picture. That's what I was able to milk out.
Oh, okay. So I kind of somebody had brought up the whole Tom Slick CIA connection, and so from what I'm seeing here, a few times it's referenced in different books. Now, not directly referenced, and if anybody understands anything to do with intelligence or geopolitics, the way it's referenced is in such a way that it does kind of lend credibility to this maybe being a spying expedition
Mm.
using that area to spy on China. And trying to think here, President's Secret Wars in 1986 does kind of mention some of the facts about Tibet in the book. And
Mm.
some of the information kind of seems to circle back to a possible involvement by people in the not necessarily directly Tom Slick, but people in the group. Then the CIA cult of intelligence also brings up some of the information about Tibet and the escape of the Dalai Lama during the Chinese takeover.
Mm.
Now, this is it's read between the lines information. It's not, hey, yeah, we were. It's
Yeah.
never going to be that. It's always going to be take a little snippet of column A, a little bit of column B, go over to column X and find the cipher for it and bring it all back together and see what you're getting.
Right. Right.
So you also got to think about Tom Slick, is Texas oilman, right?
Yep. Yep.
Who is one of the higher ups in the CIA at this point, involved in CIA operations in this point?
I don't know.
George Bush.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of operations are run through Texas. A lot of shell companies have connections in and around Texas.
Uh,
So you definitely have I had to adjust my thing. I was looking like a crazy person on my screen. So you definitely have some connections to an area that has moving components of the CIA
mm.
or just the intelligence community in general. It doesn't necessarily need to be the CIA because some people point to the CIA at that point's operational capability was not that great. There's
Yeah.
a lot of failures, a lot of missteps, a lot of stuff that they screwed up on. But there was a New York Times article, April 27th, 1957, which cites the Russians saying the Russians see espionage in U.S. snowman hunt. And this is
Mm.
during the time of Slick's expeditions there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now there is the actual Dalai Lama rescue part of this
Mm.
is basically a CIA operation. It's handled by a U.S. Army colonel who supervises the secret air missions in that area, running through I believe they were a poultry company in that part of the country in the world.
Uh.
Basically, they had information knowing that this was about to happen and got the Dalai Lama disguised as a regular temple guard,
Uh.
got him out of the area and got him to a US controlled airfield and flew him out of the country.
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely have there's definitely some smoke there.
Right.
And if you're looking at that, if you have smoke, what's the saying? You have fire.
Right. Right.
So there's
Now, when did you say that the CIA reports came out? In the 80s?
the first book was in 86 was the President's Secret Wars.
Uh-huh.
And then I believe
Oh, that's when the book came out.
yeah,
Okay. All right.
the books
Okay.
came out at this point. And then the CIA, the cult of intelligence, I think was closer to the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. I kind of remember seeing it or seeing somewhere that it was published in the 90s. But you do go back to April of 57 while this is going
Mhm.
on, and the Russians are pointing to, hey, this is an intelligence gathering operation. This whole story is bogus.
Right,
You've
right.
got to consider at that fact or at that point in time, both countries were doing things like this to they're using scientific exploration to further their intelligence gathering capability.
Yeah.
They're doing testing on, the Arctic and animal research in different areas of the world. You're also coming out of World War II. You still have, you know, French Indochina is in a conflict. You just ended the Korean War. The
Oh,
Chinese have been involved in the Korean War. The Chinese themselves were in a small cultural revolution at that point. There were some
mhm.
changes in their governmental structure. So were we looking into this to try to figure out our in, which within a few years actually works out to be our in China is through, some developments and being able to give them technology and them opening up their market and allowing for privately owned businesses. So you're definitely looking at a time frame where there's a reason to be there. Even if you're not looking at China, um, you have the Vietnamese having their, issues. The Chinese do not love the communist North Vietnam as much as people would like to think. In fact, they replaced the government of North Vietnam after the war with more pro-Chinese actors.
Right, right.
So you definitely, I mean, now was the original goal of this expedition um to look for information on the Yeti, other animals, unknown animals in that area? Yeah, it could be. You could have whatever the number of say 10 participants in a group, 9 of them are there for 100% scientific reasons for the reasons stated,
Right, right.
and you have one who's operating on a different plan. If we go back to the Dyatlov Pass, you go to that one guy who doesn't fit in with the group. He's
Yeah, the
old,
older guy.
yeah, the ex-military, older guy. You know, you have a lot of yeah, everything else makes sense, and then you have this one anomaly that kind of oh, maybe it's somebody who's just interested in this and decides to pay money to come with.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, there is definitely
No, no, not to cut you off, but you mentioned about, the Russians were trying to say that the expedition was bogus, that it was like a espionage kind of thing, it was a spy tactic kind of thing.
mhm.
Do you think that maybe the expedition was legit and the Russians were just trying to tote that to create conflict? Or maybe like a smoke and mirrors kind of thing? Like, "Hey, they're here, they're too close, they're doing this, they're spying on us," so that way they could kind of let China in the back door to kind of, you know, do that open market kind of thing, or
Well, you gotta look at geopolitics at that point. Um, Russia is the major communist power. China's goal was to replace Russia as the major communist power. That was their underlying goal back at that time. I have seemed to have frozen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Oh,
I can still hear you. Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
Yep.
So China was looking to replace Russia as the major power. China does not have the best relations with America at that point due to the Korean War. Uh,
Mhm.
could it have been a secret way for even Chinese intelligence official, in some level, to meet with an American? They're not spending all their time in the mountain. They have to ascend, descend, travel. Is it a chance meeting to say, "Hey, you're gonna happen to be in this, this town. There's a bar. Go in the bar,
Yeah, yeah.
sit down, order this, and one of our agents will come over and speak to you for, some information and try to work out an agreement." So, Yeah, there's definitely I don't know I don't know if Russia would use that because what's the gain? I mean, Russia would just call us out. There's
Yeah, yeah.
they would just flat out say they're spying on China via this.
Right.
You
Oh my
know,
god, excuse me.
for and here's the thing, we were already spying on these parts of the world anyway.
Right.
Going back even into mid 1943, we were spying on Stalin. Stalin
Right.
was spying on at one of the major conferences there towards the end of the war. Stalin had Roosevelt's room bugged.
Mhm.
Mm, so we were already spying. This was
Oh
an
yeah,
open.
I mean, look at even with Project Blue Book. With all that, like when they're trying to investigate all these UFO sightings and stuff like that, the US military, everything kept pointing back to Russia collusion, Russia's involvement, Russia, Russia, Russia. But Hynek and Quinn were trying to figure out, was it Russia, or was it legitimately unidentified flying phenomena?
Well, I don't know.
And that's the 40s and 50s.
Yeah. Well, this goes off subject, but speaking on that level of spying and stuff at that point, there is the Annie Jacobs story in one of her books. And I think it's a book on Roswell, and I can't remember, or Area 51. I think it's Area 51. She wrote the book on.
Uh-huh.
Basically, what they say is from a high level military official from back in that time, Roswell was Russian.
Mhm.
It was a program by Russia to see how close they could get into our defensive areas. They towed behind what looked like a flying saucer. They released it. They had basically altered some human bodies to resemble the gray alien spacemen. They had taken some handicapped people and basically altered them a little more and dropped them into this area. Of course, now we have to cover up that it was Russia. We know it's Russia, but we can't admit that they got that close to one of our nuclear fleet.
Right, right.
So, yeah, I mean, to me, there's just enough smoke to kind of put it out there that it could have just been. And again, like I said, it could be 9 out of the 10 people involved are legitimately involved in what they claim to be involved
Right,
in.
right.
If one person or they're setting up a network of, hey, if we can get into these villages high up in the mountains that overlook these passes, and we can get somebody to relay us information from this monastery,
Mhm.
some other group, that's affiliated with us, that could be a plausible idea and basically use the whole, well, we found footprints. Now it does not get rid of the fact of there are many people to this day who have had sightings, have found footprints, have, you know, encounters.
Yeah.
Is it a cover?
That's what we were just talking about in, what was it, 2017 or 2007 with Josh Gates. Found those trackways.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean,
So, I mean, there's still something going on out there, you know?
yeah, and it gives you a plausible story to use on, hey, w there's this mythology or folklore built around this creature. We need to get into this area. Let's use this to gain access and, you know, start to develop our networks in this area.
Right, right, right.
So, yeah, I mean, the Slick end of it, could Slick have been involved? I mean, there's no direct records tying him to any involvement in OSS or the CIA or any intelligence service of America. But again,
Yeah,
you're going back to somebody who also has connections in a certain geographic area where a lot of the higher ups have contact and are from.
right, right. Yeah, just his involvement in the, in the oil industry and stuff like that. You know what I mean? You got a lot of political people in that industry and stuff like that. So and to use the Yeti, you know what I mean? Like maybe he is genuinely interested in that as kind of like a side thing or whatever. And it's kind of like, hey, look, that's putting you in the perfect place at the perfect time. So yeah, just you're going for the Yeti,
Mm,
but do this as well.
yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
like you said, there could be that 1 out of the 10 is the operative, and
mm,
they go back down to the village to, resupply, and, "Oh, I gotta run to the market quick. I'll be back, guys. I'll be right back." He goes and meets with the informants or whatever, and then, they have their
yeah,
rendezvous, and then they still are looking for the Yeti.
yeah, yeah, and I mean, as you see, like, in the story of how they get the pieces of the Yeti, alleged Yeti, out of that area,
Mhm.
almost to the point where they're testing the security capabilities of the British
True.
government, to get to you use this cover story. Now that cover story doesn't get released until much later, but if you're smuggling something out of a country and they don't check a specific type of baggage, the easiest way to smuggle something out is to put it in that said baggage.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
And to have a film crew and stuff like that, are you setting up observation points just to see if you can see, you know, dust off in the distance, more light from a specific area because there's armored personnel there. They're setting up camps closer to the border, so you're going to see more, you're going to have more non-natural interference with this surrounding area.
True. It all makes sense.
Yeah. So I mean, there's definitely something there, but there's no direct correlation or information tying this person directly to it, but also do we have the list of people that were on that expedition's names?
Not all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't know if the omitted names don't have a background in, I mean, were there any Germans involved?
I couldn't the only people I knew about was Slick was funding and the Byrne brothers were the ones basically heading it, you know what I mean, at the mountain, and the rest of the teams involved or the peoples involved were, well, there's primatologist, that Osmond Hill, but he was
He was,
off-site.
yeah,
He was the one looking at the stuff that was smuggled out. But yeah, I mean, and well, then there's Hillary, but he was after the fact. He wasn't really associated with that, and he was kind of the competition
yeah,
to that expedition. So yeah, I mean, there really is no mention of other team members other than the Byrne brothers
that,
and Slick himself.
yeah. So I mean, you take this expedition to this area, and yeah, okay, you're always going to have the leader of the expedition is always going to be the most famous,
Mhm.
but there's other people involved.
Right.
There's support staff, there's, logistics, there's, boots on the ground. So without knowing a complete list of those people, you can't rule it out
Yeah.
as this could have been a diversionary tactic to get these people into this part of the world without drawing direct attention if they show up on a manifest at an airport.
True. Yeah. And they do mention about paying 10,000 rupees to the temple. I mean that was to take the samples out, but that could also be hush money.
Mhm.
Like, look, this is what we're saying we're taking, just don't say anything else,
Yeah.
you know? Because normally nobody, I mean, they'd have like a little donation box, but nobody would really pay anything significant,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and not knowing the geography of the region to be able to say like, "Oh, this is a great vantage point to be able to see certain things," or, you know, "Hey, there's a test site for some kind of military equipment in this area, and we can directly, we can have the stereo equipment there to monitor the seismographs, you
Excuse
know,
me.
the different air quality sampling. I mean, that's how we figured out a lot of stuff with Russia was we had observation points close enough that we could get data quickly and then compare it to data further out. I mean, even in Paramunda with the German scientist, there was enough information coming from just observations from areas that were a distance away, but they could definitely tell there was something going on in those places.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, there's no way to rule it out without having a complete list and knowing the actual connections, but it does it does kind of give you a little sense of maybe this is something. And I'm sure, I mean, the expeditions looking for Shangri-La, were they ways of other governments connecting to allied, their allies in those areas without sending or having an offsite meeting thinking they're they have a mole.
Yeah.
So you need to have an offsite meeting to be able to share information or to gather information that your ally has gathered for you. Is it easy to get to those places and put people in contact with each other?
It all makes sense. But I mean, it's kind of clouding one mystery with another, but it's still just very interesting information. And I'm really glad that you did make it in to share this because I thought it was pretty cool that you found that information out and how it all ties together. Because it's like, all right, well, you think you're going to look for a monster, but there's all this espionage and all this, secrets and spies and it's cool. It was awesome. I was so glad that you made it in.
Hold on one second.
He'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. Sorry, I was looking for something. It was a joke. I was going to grab my CIA lanyard. I don't know where that is now, though. On board, evidently moved it. But yeah, I was going to say I was holding it up to the camera and making funny out of it, but since I can't find work, but
Well, before we end, excuse me, Moon Joey did post a question, and I do encourage everybody to post any questions that you have, whether it be pertaining to the show or something that you guys think that you think we could help answer. So there are plenty of sightings, but is there much discussion on Sasquatch disappearing from someone's eyes, i.e., frequency illusion? Well, you hear a lot of topics about people seeing a Bigfoot or following tracks, and all of a sudden they disappear, or they just stop dead in their tracks, no pun intended, and they go no further. So where did this thing go? What happened to this thing? Or some people were witnessing a Sasquatch, and then all of a sudden it just disappeared. And I believe if what you're saying, you're asking their frequency illusion, is related to the infrasound. Supposedly, Sasquatch can project an infrasound that has plays a lot on the human mind and the way and human perception and stuff like that. Excuse me, to the point where it could almost make you think that something disappears. So the infrasound is affecting you to the point where it obscures your vision. It kind of makes you think you're seeing something that might not be there, or makes you feel sick or nauseous or vertigo, or it affects people in different ways. And Chad, I know we mentioned this before on the show. We had, I guess, kind of an experience that would kind of go along those lines. A property that Chad and I frequent a lot that has some very interesting things happen there in the past. Um, we were just doing a random investigation during the winter several years back, and as we were coming back from the site that we were doing most of the research at, we were coming around a pond, and we could swear that we could hear something behind us, like trailing, but not on the trail and through the woods alongside of us. So we made our way around the back end of this pond. It was a decent sized pond, but not anything super huge. And then this thing was off in the far end. So as we were kind of getting around the back end of this pond, almost to the point where we could get back up to the house that was on this property, excuse me, we both heard a deep reverberating sound. Uh, Almost sounded like it was coming from the pond under the ice.
Yeah,
It was bizarre. Yeah, it was just this weird, and it wasn't that normal like that. My poor attempt at making the sound, like, it's more of a high pitch, like kind of sound that you hear under ice of air and stuff passing through under the ice at night. I mean, sound travels so much more better at night. Um, this was a deep, almost hard to hear reverberation rumble. I got really dizzy and kind of nauseous. Um, Kind of wanted to just get the hell out of there.
yeah, it almost sounded like a, um Les and I used to work security at, like, a racetrack. It was like somebody firing up, like, a big engine.
Yep,
Just
yep.
and it
That's a
just
perfect example.
it you felt it more than you heard it, like, eh, I don't know if that makes sense to say it that way, but it was more of like it hit you, not like you heard it, but like it was almost like the force of something starting hit you.
Yep, you felt it. Yeah, right in the chest.
And just like the like equilibrium was off, like anxiety inducing, and like just like kind of trying to figure out like, okay, first of all, what was that? And then it was like, I really don't want to know what it was. I
Right,
really just want to keep walking. We weren't that far, from getting to the opening where we could kind of get back to the house and stuff, like the barn area and stuff like that. And it was more or less like, okay, get your wits about you and just start moving.
right, right. Yeah, I remember because initially I remember getting vertigo
Mm,
and almost feeling like I was gonna pass out, like I just wanted to like lay down or something.
yeah,
It was bizarre, but
yeah.
so go ahead.
It was weird because this is a place that we've been,
A million
countless
times.
times. We've said it. I mean, we've quadded out there, we've walked out there, we've taken dogs and walked around out there, we've put up trail cams, we've sat in tree stands and watched for stuff moving at night. Never experienced anything like that anywhere. And
Right,
and haven't since, and still don't really know what it was.
right. Now we both did find tracks and we casted
Yeah,
tracks out, which they're actually right behind me in a glass case. Do you want me to grab them?
well, you can.
Okay.
Um, you grab those. I was actually gonna bring up, when we're talking about, like, frequency illusion, are we more referring to the Bader-Meinhof, theorem, or are we talking about something a little bit different? Because if you're looking at that, that's more or less the noticing of things that once you notice them for the first time, you notice them more often. So it's not really, um, illusion in that sense. It's the, you first time you notice a certain type of car, like you buy a new Volkswagen Rabbit. I don't even know if they make those, but I highly doubt it.
Not
And then
anymore.
all of a sudden you see Volkswagens more and more often. I'm sorry, Joey actually responded there. If you want to take a look
Oh,
at that.
yeah. Hold on.
But yeah, so that's the actual the frequency illusion that I'm thinking of, and there may be a different definition for that and all that and use, but so
Yes. So he says different. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in theory, infrasound enables our eyesight, affecting our eyes processing photons, striking them. Thus, Sasquatch would seem to disappear. Yeah, kind of. That's kind of along the lines that I was saying before. Is it would screw with? Now you went a little bit more into the details of it, which you're more correct than I am. It screws with you. Like it really screws with you, and it probably could make that effect where your eyes are just I don't know, going wacky and it just disappears. But my question would be, would it only would it only affect you seeing the thing making the sound? Because if it's gonna screw with your eyesight, why would only the Sasquatch disappear and everything else would be fine? So is it only the thing projecting the infrasound that would then disappear? You know what I mean? Like you would think if it's gonna, you know, mess with your eyesight, everything would go.
yeah, unless it is a targeted, like it's causing a cloaking, not the I'm thinking more of the Star Trek cloaking, not the cloaking Sasquatch that could
Yeah, yeah.
into that. But like, is it a targeted thing where it is a specific area, the predator's cloaking system where it hits the button and it goes to that, and you don't see it anymore? Now, you
Yeah.
also got to think about like ocular vibration, though. That's the a lot of people, like people always say, "Oh, I'm in my house and I see something out of the corner of my eye, and when I turn, it's not there." Well, it's because your eyes are vibrating. Your
Right.
whole body vibrates. But when you have that phenomenon of seeing something out of the corner of your eye, it's just the vibration is causing it to look like there is somebody standing, right here on you.
Right, right.
So I'm not well versed and in the I understand infrasound, have looked into that. When it comes to being able to target it and affect eyesight, like you said, would it not affect everything? Also, once it stops making the sound, how long, you know, it would almost have to continuously make that sound until it got completely out of the area where you are, where you couldn't
Right.
get another glimpse of it.
Right, exactly. Now, granted, that may be a short stint because I mean, there was a. Did you ever see that paranormal caught on camera?
Yeah.
There was a few. Actually, Leslie and I were just watching that the other night, and there was one with a Bigfoot caught in the trail cam and stuff like that, and it was standing next to this stick structure, like a little fort or something like that, made out of sticks. And if you didn't know any better, like, if it didn't move, like,
Mhm.
you just see it shift every now and again, like, kinda sway. If you didn't see you would not have known that that thing was there. Like, it looked just like a bush.
Mhm.
And even I always go back to this because it's my favorite movie, and it just holds water. The end of Harry and the Hendersons, when Harry walks back into the woods and then all the other Sasquatch of family members start popping up, and the little baby one pops up. It was curled up right in plain view, just curled in a ball, standing there, and
Yeah.
then just hops up and leaves. Like, it doesn't take much for them to not cloak, but camouflage and blend, you
Well,
know?
yeah, you got to think about like, people with like ghillie suits.
Right, right.
The original intent of ghillie suits was to be camouflage, to be
Yeah.
hidden in plain sight. And if you watch anything about the like military sniper schools, scout sniper
Mhm.
schools, Marine Corps, anything like that, they show you how well those guys are at, and they're also moving at times, and
Yeah,
people don't even realize, like, hey, why is that bush over there seems to have gotten closer, and by the time you realize it's gotten closer, it's too late.
right, right.
So you now have an animal who's had maybe millions of years of evolution in the theory and practice in the theory of I stay hidden for a reason. And even if you go back to some of the stories where you've had people, the what is it, love Lovelock Caves or whatever, where they said they burn up a whole bunch of large
Yeah, yeah, those
uh,
the red-haired things.
yeah. So you think about it, you may have had these instances where these things were known to people and the results aren't good. Like being
Yeah,
known to the human or the little things isn't good for us. So we have worked on perfecting the camouflage,
yeah.
adaptations even genetically may be there for camouflage. Like I think, and I can't. I remember listening to it the one time on a Chris Jericho podcast where I forget who he was interviewing, but they were talking about the hair. Is the hair follicle itself reflecting and bending light and all off of it and color
It's
to
possible.
to the eye? So, and I wish I could remember when that was. It was a couple of years ago that he had interviewed this person,
I
but yeah,
remember that, yeah. I
they had
remember
talked the
that
hair.
conversation.
Yeah, the hair basically is basically warping the surrounding around it and like almost taking on the color of the wall
Yeah,
or the trees around it, the bushes. So it's kind of distorting its actual um image. Well, yeah, like polar bear hair.
yep.
And
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's clear, it's not even white, yeah.
I think that was one of the examples that the person he was interviewing brought up is it's taking on a white appearance even though it's not white.
Yeah, and its skin is black.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's definitely stuff like that out there. I mean, and also you think about the just number of different hair color sightings all over the world of these creatures. Is it they're picking up color from the surroundings, and that's what people are reporting is, oh, it was brown. Well, it's in a more high canopy wooded area.
True, yeah, yeah, or was it, like, during the fall or whatever when the leaves are brown and whatnot? Is it just absorbing that? Yeah. No, that's a good point. So, we are almost at a half hour past our normal time, but I brought these casts out. This was the first cast. This is what sparked it all, to for Chad and I to, further investigate this location. It's still an ongoing location, and, but this was the first one, November 24th of 2012, actually on my birthday. This was the first one somewhere there.
Pull back a little. There you
There we go. Yeah, this was the first one that we got. It's about 15.5 inches long by 7.5 wide. Um, this was the first one that I had found, when I was out. I just went out riding my quad the one day for my birthday before we had to go somewhere. I think we're going to my in-laws or something. And I'm like, well, I'm just gonna go out for a quick ride really quick. And I took the trails I took a million times, and this was right after we had a lot of heavy winds and stuff, and a lot of trees were down. So the path I normally ride, a tree had fallen over. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll go around it. I see this other trail that I never really noticed before. So I'll go up it. I went up, I came upon this mud puddle, and at that time it was actually flurrying that day. It was cold. I didn't really feel like breaking out the hose and everything to clean off my quad because I always put it away clean to avoid rust. And um whatchamacallit, I just stopped at the puddle. I'm like, what the hell? I'll take a look and see what I could find. And sure enough, there was this track, a left footprint, right as the puddle had started closest to me, and you could see that the footprint went in heel first and went up, hit heel first, kind of bent up to the toes. You can make the last three toes out distinctly, and the first two were over like a little root, so you couldn't really see them well. But the water was chocolatey and pooling back into the impression. So it just happened. Like I had to have just so if you were there, and you can find it on the Sasquatch ATV research team Facebook page. We have a whole shit ton of pictures and stuff that happened on that property. It's like insane. The carp, we'll get that's there's another show. Go back and listen to Sasquatch on the Farm. We talk a lot more about this. Um, so the water was pooling back in, and it looked like something just stepped with the left foot, hopped over the puddle onto dry land, and took off. So Chad and I went back there a few times in that same area. Um, and then Chad found this one, which is quite a bit smaller, um, but still, the cast doesn't really do it justice. If you were there, it was a distinct footprint in the soft, like pine needle bedding under a bunch of pine trees, and it was like that soft pine needly mossy kind of substrate. Now at the time, I was well over 300 pounds. I was trying to step on this. I would like jump up in the air and try and land one footed onto the ground and try and make an impression. I could barely put a dent in the substrate. So whatever that thing was without a doubt heavier than I was at the time. And like I said, I was probably 330 something at that time. I was really heavy. And I couldn't budge that earth. So those were the tracks that started it all for us, and we've been going back there ever since, and we've had all kinds of crazy shit happen. Like we said, with the infrasound thing, it affected both of us. We had cameras malfunction, which I think I talked about that briefly before. This was maybe a year ago. I put 4 different trail cams out. 3 of them were in a lower location. One was right next to where these tracks were found. One of them was down in an open meadow where Chad and I were investigating. Actually, the night we experienced the infrasound, we had what we called the peaker. Down in the far end of the meadow, there was something, looked like something like a head and shoulders peeking out of the pine trees coming out, and it was a full moon. We usually always try to go out on a full moon so we could see better. And something like we were both standing, and I mean, how far do you think that was? Like maybe 100 yards?
About 100 yards, and we were elevated up a little bit off the ground.
Higher from it, yeah.
And it looked like just almost like somebody, playing peekaboo with you. Like, here's the trees, and all of a sudden you just see,
Yeah.
and then it would go back. And I mean, the tree was much wider than my hand in reference to this sighting, but
Well, it was like coming in and out of the shadows.
yeah. And it would just every so often it would do like an upright, like where it would just lean, and then also it would be like down, and you just see it like poke out from another little spot.
Yeah. So it
And
was toying with us.
yeah, I mean, if it was a deer, or I mean, first of all, if it was a deer, it would be a monster
Mm.
deer, and it would poke itself out, and then it would go back, and this went on for a little while, and then it just kind of stopped happening. Up at the same location, I saw something cross in an opening between two sections of trees. Now it wasn't a big like full opening; it was just enough where I could probably see, say, a 6-foot person. I could see the lower half of them cross over in this area, and
As it was paralleling us.
just happened to see something go across it at one point. It looked, I mean, it reminded me of my like winter outdoor hunting pants, like thickness wise, on a set of legs. I mean, I don't have little legs, so you know it similar in that sense of like thickness of legs. I couldn't give you an idea how tall, but thickness wise, it looked to be similar to like my legs in those pants.
Yeah.
In fact, if you go on any um I think on the Explorers page and on the Sasquatch ATV page, you'll see me in those pants. I know there's at least one picture of us when we were out, and I'm in those pants, so you can see the thickness of what I'm referencing.
Yeah, I think it's the picture of you standing by one of the horses. You're wearing those pants.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Probably that one time we hiked up where that tree uprooted too. I think I might be.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I think it was the same day, in fact. Yeah.
No, that was when we went with your brothers and your nephew. Your brother and your nephews.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, that was the same day as the horse. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that location, my God, excuse me. We had camera traps out. One was where these two tracks were found, back where that trail was. The other was in the meadow where we saw the peaker. The other one was back by a fresh coyote kill, back by one of the tree stands Chad was talking about. And this really cool little section of pines. Cause I always find like the little clusters of pine the most interesting, because every time we would go through these, remember, we would find these like little caches of turkey carcasses all like shredded up, and all different kind of like small game just shredded up. Now it could have easily have been packs of coyotes, but it was just bizarre how in these little clusters of pine trees where everything was just kind of overlapping itself, almost like shelter in a way, there was all these remnants of dead animals. But I had a camera back there, and then I had another one at the small pond, which was closest to the house. And the small pond, again, if you go to the Sasquatch ATV research team Facebook page, you'll see a lot of the photos. 48 to 50 some odd inch carp were being pulled out. Bite marks, like if you were to take a bite out of a sandwich, that semicircular humanoid bite was taken out of the bottom part of these carp. The bite marks were about 4.5 to 5 inches wide. I mean, in the one picture, my bulldog's face was next to it and was wider than his bite. It was a semicircular bite taken out of the lower part of the carp where the egg sacs would be. So it's like taking a bite out, sucking the roe out, and discarding the rest. So any large animal throughout the cold months isn't going to expel the calories to eat a lot of meat like that, because the body will burn more than it's going to gain out of that. So it would go to the high calorie, high protein areas that are easy to digest, like the eggs, just bite it, suck them out, and left it. There were three of these carp, and one of them was a big koi that were left throughout that 1 year. We have a lot of pictures of those. You could check them out. But anyways, the last camera was near that pond, which was closer to the house. The three that were out in the active areas that I had previously mentioned, every single one of those cameras started recording almost to the same exact, it was the same day, almost to the same exact hour. They all started recording. They got about halfway through their video and shut off. No other videos were recorded, and they were out there for what, like 4 months? I
Yeah, I
think I
think.
had them out there for
Yeah,
um, a long time. And so the three that were in the hot areas, I guess you could say, the hot spots, they stopped recording and then never recorded anything after that. And like I said, the one was on a deer carcass that coyotes were actively engaged in, and I didn't get anything. But the one that was by the pond closest to the house had hours worth of videos on it, to the day I went and picked it up, and it filmed me. All the other ones didn't film me. They were all off. But when I brought them home, every single one of them had full battery. But yet they mysteriously all turned off at the same time and stopped recording thereafter. So Chad and I have a plan. Well, Chad actually thought up the plan that we're going to be going back down to this area, hopefully over the summer, with some more cameras and more footage, and or more equipment. And we'll tell you more about it when the time comes, but we're going to do an experiment out there to see what happens. Ryan, your question, do you ever go out with thermal? Nothing can hide from thermal. That is a very, very good point. We have everything in our arsenal: bionic ears, night vision, recorders out the wazoo, EMF detectors, like things to read the electromagnetic fields in the air and all that stuff. But the one thing we do not have is thermal, but it is on our list. So we will be getting that hopefully by the time we go back out into that hot spot this coming summer, because there's a lot that we want to look into while we're out there. And I think I lost Chad. His video has just cut off. So Chad, if you can make it back in, great. If not, I'm probably going to wrap it up because we are way over our time limit. But I did want to share those couple things as we end the historic Yeti Encounters. This was part 3. We made it. I didn't think I was going to make it through this whole show without my best friend and co-host, but I did. We did, and we got to conclude our Yeti show. So the next show that we have coming up, I believe, is on the Marfa Lights. I believe, or Mystery Lights is what we're going to be covering, and then we have a few other shows that are in the works. Chad's working on one, and I'm working on another one. I think it's going to be to give you a little bit of a sneak peek. I believe it's going to be on mini monsters. I've got a lot of new books that I've been skimming through, and a lot of them talk about small creatures. So I'm going to make that show Mini Monsters. It's going to be all the different creatures, sightings, and reports throughout the United States. So tune in for that. That'll be coming up in 3 shows from now, because the next one is the lights, and the one after that is a show Chad's putting together. Then after that is going to be Mini Monsters. So we have a few shows lined up for you guys. We hope you all tune back in, and thank you all very, very much for tuning in. And again, I apologize. Chad had prior engagements that he just couldn't get out of, unfortunately. So I tried to carry the show, and we got through it. And you guys all stuck in there, and I greatly appreciate it. So again, thank you so much, and tune in next week. We'll be back, and that will be what's today? The 28th, I think. So that'll be April 4th, I think. April 4th is the next one. And thank you, Normia. I hope I feel better too, because I apologize for all the coughing and sniffling. I still feel like shit, and it's a week after. Don't know if it's my corona or not, but we were all tested. I came back negative, so I don't know, whatever it is. Maybe it's a sinus allergies. I don't freaking know, but I feel like shit. But we made it. Anyways, thank you, everybody. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.